Welcome to the DreamViews podcast, episode 3.
Where each week we'll be covering any and everything revolving around the world of lucid dreaming.
We're your hosts, Rare Cola
and Ophelia Blue.
This week we'll be talking about the tasks of the month and tasks of the year, as well as people's experiences with these tasks. So Lisa can explain exactly what these are.
All right. The tasks of the month and tasks of the year are basically motivational tools for the lucid dreamers on our forum. These tasks are designed to inspire a beginner to achieve a simple lucid task or something more complicated, say if you're an avid lucid dreamer and have just run out of ideas of things to do. A thread is dedicated to these tasks where members can post their attempts, successes, or even failures. It's often interesting even to read about an almost task. One example is where I was trying to get a dream character to help me find a prop, basically, that I needed to complete the lucid task. I got that far, and then I totally woke up. So sometimes those failures are kind of interesting to read about. I like to hear how people approach these tasks. And mainly, I believe that reading other people's experiences in this thread help inspire me to try harder and even become somewhat competitive, because each time you complete a task successfully, your avatar gets crowned with a set of silver or golden wings, depending on the task. It's kind of like having a trophy for the month or a bragging right. The task of the year is just like the task of the month, but it's much more complicated and involved, and you just get, one time a year that it's posted.
Yeah, definitely. It's really competitive in these threads as well, because as you mentioned, you get these specific silver and gold wings. Everybody's trying to fight for these little badges they get on their usernames. So do you want to jump right into some examples of the tasks of the month? So
yes.
Yes.
A couple examples of the task of the month. I think it was 2 months ago. There was one where you had to walk through a mirror and describe what was on the other side.
There was one to find a magical potion and drink it and describe its effects. That was a really interesting one.
Yeah, that one provided a lot of very interesting results.
And we had one, let a shadow detach from your body and then chase it. And there were some advanced tasks as well. They were basic ones we were talking about. And there was find a Pegasus and tame and ride it, or jump on a speeding train. And a recent one was travel to an alien world and find one of the locals and go out and date one of them. But I don't think anybody actually completed that one.
Nobody did. There was one user, I think it was Max Smiley Face is his name, and he managed to get to an alien world, and they were the only sentient beings there were these giant worms, and he couldn't bring himself to ask one out on a date.
Yeah, I think I read that one. It was really funny. I would have just asked a worm on a date with me just to see how it would have gone.
Right, yeah, you're there, you're lucid, you want to get your wings, you might as well, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a dream. Who cares if you go on a date with a random alien worm?
Exactly.
Although I think he did say that they were, like, life-size. I suppose that is a bit creepy.
Yeah, that's true, they were life-size, now I remember.
I wouldn't want to imagine any kind of intimate relationships with these worms.
No, but the cool thing about that task, though, is it would be interesting to see maybe what kind of restaurant they would take you to and what kind of food that you would eat, or what they would do for entertainment, or what would one of those worms be driving for a vehicle. What would you be getting in the passenger seat of exactly?
Yeah, so we would like to sort of discuss the other tasks of the month as well from previous months and go over ideas for future tasks of the month. So we was talking the other day that we'd like to sort of introduce more seasonal tasks of the month. I mean, this has been done before with like Christmas, and I think there's been some Halloween ones here and there. But we thought it'd be interesting to have a sort of like Olympics style tasks for this month as well. We just completely seem to forget about it.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned that gymnastics would be interesting.
I think gymnastics would be very interesting. Kind of falling under the sort of extreme sport style of lucid dreaming. We had a few advanced tasks that were kind of related to that, but when are any of us ever going to get to go on the uneven bars or do some kind of gymnastic activity that involved backflips and jumping up on rings, or being the fastest runner? I thought some of those things, it just being an Olympian, being able to do something better than anyone else. That'd be a great opportunity to do that. We'll just have to wait 4 more years to make it seasonal based.
Yeah, I'd really like to do like the sailing or the kayaking. I think that would be really cool inside of a lucid dream.
Oh yeah. But I
Or
think you mentioned that instead of participating in the sport, that you would try and maybe manipulate the sport in a way or two.
yeah, I mean, even just visiting the Olympics in London would be quite interesting in a lucid dream just to see how it went. But then while you're there, I mean, why don't you try and mess up the sports, like throwing a banana peel on the athletics track or something? Or yeah, there's so many different things you could do to just see how dream characters react. I mean, we've mentioned this before, that dream characters are just the craziest things, that they just form from your mind somehow, and they do all these wacky things. It would be really interesting to see how they respond to messing up their Olympics.
We might have a runner, a gold medalist runner, come after you and see if you can be faster after you throw a banana peel in front of him.
Yeah, you just throw it on the track and then he just diverts off the track and starts running up after you.
You never know. Dream characters are very spontaneous.
Yeah, they're saying that they could probably even fly up and like throw fireballs at you.
Yeah, as punishment. Oh yeah, yeah. They're very vindictive.
So besides that, we've got like Halloween coming up. I know you've got a lot of ideas for Halloween, so do you want to talk about some of those?
I do. My whenever I choose a basic task or an advanced task for the month, I try and go by what our Lucid Task Club comes up with for ideas. But I tend to be drawn more towards the ideas that are a little morbid. I think it's interesting because nobody wants to do anything gross in a lucid dream or anything that would make you the least bit squeamish, which we'll talk about one later on. That's one of the current tasks. But Halloween would be the perfect opportunity to do some of these, like be bitten by a vampire, or be a vampire and bite someone and describe what that's like. You know, we have no idea what it's like. There's plenty of movies that depict it, but what would that actually be like? Or being a werewolf, where you actually go from human to werewolf and do some kind of mauling somebody and then turn back into a human and pretend like you didn't know what happened. I didn't do that. There are all kinds of things you could do.
Yeah, I think you mentioned building your own Frankenstein's monster as well, which would be pretty advanced.
Yeah.
But
that would definitely be advanced. Yeah, being able to maybe even go to a graveyard and dig up some body parts and put them together and stick some jumper cables on them and see what happens. See what you can create. I mean, that's what this lucid dreaming is about, is creating anything, everything.
Yeah, I really like these tasks where it's sort of just random, like your subconscious just picks it. Like if you built Frankenstein's monster, it would be interesting to see whether it be friendly, whether it be aggressive, or something completely, something you wouldn't even think of, because your subconscious picks these things that you're like, wow, did I really sort of come up with that?
Yeah, lucid dreaming is very much like that. It is a combination of what you're trying to do and control and create as consciously as you can in a lucid dream, but your subconscious is still there. It's still working. It's still firing, and you never know what it's going to throw at you. Yeah, you might end up with a real, just kind of sweet little monster that does what you say, or it may just turn ballistic and come after you. Be very interested in seeing what that one does. I might do that one for Halloween, actually.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it would be good to induce like a lucid nightmare as well, because you always have nightmares, but you never would think to induce them yourself, especially in a lucid dream. I'm not entirely sure how it would work, but I think it would be really interesting to try and sort of scare yourself, particularly for Halloween.
No, that would be good for people who are comfortable, I should say, with maybe facing a childhood nightmare or even an adult nightmare. Most of the time we say that we try and help people learn how to lucid dream so they can confront their nightmares and get over them and hopefully not have them anymore. But for Halloween, in the spirit of the season, it might be interesting to kind of just conjure it up and see where it goes. Why not?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've also got Thanksgiving coming up. There's a lot of interesting ones we could do for that. Like you mentioned, turning into a turkey and running away from a butcher trying to cut your head off or something.
Oh, I'm never morbid.
No, never. And we've got Christmas as well. We have a lot of Christmas tasks over the years, just browsing through these, but I'm sure we can come up with something really creative this year with, like, I don't know, being rogue elf or something.
Rogue elf. We have this really bad movie called was it Santa Claus versus the Aliens, I think. And that might be kind of interesting. A
Just
little off the wall.
aliens. Yeah,
Yeah.
aliens attacking the North Pole.
Yeah, or something like, no, the Martians kidnapped Santa. I don't know. Americans will know what I'm talking about. It was a really bad movie. But, oh yeah, anything revolving around winter, something with snow or, the polar ice caps or reindeers.
Yeah, I had a really brief sort of snowy lucid dream this morning, actually. And
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, I've never had snow in a lucid dream before, and I love snow. I'm like a winter fiend or something. So I was just kind of flying around in really low level consciousness and just amazed at the snow.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love snow and lucid dreams. I've had lucid dreams where it was nighttime and there was snow with moonlight. It's a beautiful, wonderful looking scenery. It's if you live in a place that has snow, unfortunately I don't. That's a great time to do, perform a reality check or increase your awareness is, a snowy morning or a snowy evening, because it's very surreal seeing everything that you see normally during waking life completely blanketed in white.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to go to talk about some of our favourite tasks of the month now?
I do. My personal favorites are kind of basically more the more recent ones. There was one where you had to walk through a mirror and describe what was on the other side, and that's a favorite for me just because I was never good at seeing transitions. I was always just kind of like, well, here's where I am, or I can walk through a door and I might just be in the next room, or nothing really exciting. The idea of walking through a mirror really perked my interest because anything could be on the other side. Who knows what your subconscious will throw at you. Whether you'll just end up on the other side of the wall in the same house, or what would happen. Anything. So that was really exciting, and there was a lot of interesting responses to that one. My second favorite one is a very morbid one that is courtesy of one of our current dream guides, Melanie B. She thought it would be interesting to perform surgery on a patient, which could be anything from literally you're a doctor in a hospital and you're washing up and getting gloves on and going in there and performing a surgery, or as a couple people mentioned, you might just end up being wherever you are in public or something, and whatever tools are around you, and you just gotta cut and hope for the best.
Just in the middle of the street.
Yeah, you gotta work with what you have in some of these lucid dreams. And then definitely my favorite one by far right now is one that you came up with, Jason. It was let me word this correctly. Find a journal within a lucid dream and write a waking life memory into it, which is kind of basically the exact opposite of waking up in the morning and writing a dream into your dream journal, which is harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
It involves two things that are quite difficult. First of all, you have to have the wherewithal in the lucid dream to remember something from your waking life, which usually it doesn't always happen. Try to remember what you did earlier, that day before, anything like that, or a quote that you read, something, and then having to find a piece of paper and a pen in this lucid dream, and then actually trying to write this memory down. It involves a lot of rational thinking, which is something that you don't normally have in a lucid dream to a high extent. So I really, really liked that one a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely really interesting and hard to achieve as well, because you sort of have to recall waking life memories, which is harder for some people. I think it'd be hard for me because I'm still quite a new lucid dreamer, so I'm still trying to gather all of this stuff inside of a lucid dream. But then a harder part for you that you mentioned is that actually just writing it down, because you have to really focus on what you're writing, otherwise it's just going to jumble into letters or hieroglyphics. Or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as for my favourite tasks of the month, I quite like the one from March 2010, which was to taste a rainbow and tell us what it tastes like. Because that's really interesting, because a rainbow is definitely not something you can generally even touch, let alone taste. It's just sort of light, and I sort of have this fascination with rainbows. Maybe it's something to do with me being an artist, but I think they're just really interesting. Have sort of a spectrum of all the colours, and it'd be fun to see what it tastes like as well, see how it feels and everything.
Oh, absolutely, especially since you can't ever get to the rainbow. It always is. It's every time you try and get up to it, it's about what angle of light that you're perceiving, and it's not like you can actually get up right to it and it be right there.
Yeah, and I did like that mirror one you mentioned as well, just seeing what's on the other side. And in a bit we're going to be talking about experiences that people have had with these tasks of the month, and we've got some really interesting ones for walking through a mirror. So the current task of the month for August 2012 is, if I can find it.
The basic task is the surgery one.
Oh yes, becoming a doctor and performing surgery on a patient.
Yeah.
And the advanced task is my one that we were just talking about, finding a journal inside of a dream and writing down your waking life recollections in it. So we haven't got all that many experiences for this month at the moment, as it's still pretty early and these are kind of hard tasks. The basic one is sort of like, not a lot of people really want to do it because it's really it's really gory.
Yeah, it is.
But then in a lucid dream, you can kind of shut off that gore anyway and make it sort of more light-hearted.
It's true.
Yeah, and the advanced task, as we mentioned, it's pretty hard to do, but I think a lot of people are trying that advanced task. We've got quite a lot of experiences with that one. So do you want to go ahead and discuss some of the experiences now of this current task?
Unfortunately, the current one with the surgery, I think there's only been a couple people, me and Oreo Boy, who've been able to do that one. Everyone has reported they're just too squeamish to even try it. And the kind of the point of doing this actually is to remind you that when you're in a lucid dream, it's not the real you. You're not cutting a real person. You're not removing the entrails of an actual human. And by forcing yourself to remove that sort of squeamishness from your lucid dream, it opens up more possibilities of what you can do. You won't be as grossed out by things and distracted by things like that, and you can move on or not be as scared of certain elements. You freeze yourself up a little bit more to do more things. The current examples of the advanced task, there have been a couple of us who've succeeded in it, and then there was one person, Paigey, who attempted it, and she had she was sitting down with a pen on paper on a rock or something, and she had the pen and the paper, and she was lucid. She remembered the task, everything was there, but she couldn't recall anything from her waking life, which is actually one of the things that makes the tasks of the month in general difficult, because essentially that's what it is. You're trying to recall something from waking life. You're trying to recall what the task was, and in addition to this, recalling something else you did during the day, what you had for dinner, what you saw on TV or something, and just couldn't get past that point of it. So like Jason said, it's still really early in the month, so we're hoping for more attempts and successes.
Yeah, I really want to do it as well, but I've been going through a dry spell, which is really frustrating. I did mention I had a very, very brief lucid this morning, but I wouldn't really class that as breaking my dry spell. But as soon as I do, I really hope I complete both of these because they're really interesting.
I do too, and yes, they are.
But do you want to talk about your surgery task and your journal task now?
Yeah, the surgery task was pretty interesting. I last month I had a hard time with the basic task. It took me 3 tries. The first time I was lucid, couldn't remember it. The second time I was lucid, I remembered it, but my other dream character was no help whatsoever. And on the third time, I got it. This month, the first time I became lucid, it popped in my head right away. And maybe because it's such an intense task to remember to perform surgery on someone. But I became lucid inside my house because I was fiddling with some pots in the kitchen that I realized I don't own in real life. I was like, I don't own these things. What is this? And that can trigger lucidity a lot, is when you're just kind of fidgeting with something that's out of place. You notice it's out of place. And I became lucid, but I couldn't find anybody to perform surgery on. I ran into a couple of family members, but I couldn't bring myself to do that to it, even though I knew it was a dream. That was, for me, that was going too far, I admit. But I ended up kind of bumping into a random dream character who looked quite ill, and I just asked him. I said, "This is my living room." I said, "Are you here for surgery?" He said, "Yeah." He was like, I have this microchip in my intestines. I need you to get it out." So the first thing that popped in my head was, what tools am I going to use? And I'm, in real life, I'm a chef, so I have all these chef knives in my kitchen. So I just turned to him and I said, "Well, lucky for you, I'm great with chef knives." And he just kind of laid down on the couch and ready for surgery. He mentioned something about having brought his own anesthesia, which I was thankful for, because I was like, I don't have anything except like a bottle of wine maybe, but he wouldn't really work. But he came back, he's like, "No, I didn't bring it." So I just said, "Hold on, I'll be right back." And I went into the kitchen, and it was almost like blessing holy water. I put some water in a glass, and I willed the glass of water to act as an anesthetic to the stream character. So, I gave it to him, and he started kind of getting tired, but he was kind of restless. And this whole while that I'm having this dream, I know in real life that my snooze alarm is about to go off again. Basically, I woke up, I've got about 10 minutes. So I had to act fast. So he wasn't going to sleep. I thought, well, he's not a real person, so I guess it's okay to go ahead and continue. I think this is where some of the squeamishness might come from. And I went ahead, I made an incision. He was kind of uncomfortable with this, but he kind of calmed down, and there was no blood. That was the other part that was really weird. There was no blood, and a little loop of his intestine kind of popped out the little cut on its own. I didn't have to dig it out. I didn't have to fish it out or anything, which I was thankful for. My subconscious was really, really giving me a big break on this one. So the loop of intestine popped out, and there was a little Band-Aid wrapped around it, and the microchip was kind of stuck under the sticky part of the Band-Aid. And he's like, he was even guiding me. That was the other cool part about him not being knocked out, was the fact that he was guiding me through his own surgery. And he said, "Okay, there's the little microchip. I need you to go ahead and just pull that out for me." So I pulled it out, and leave the Band-Aid there, that has to stay. And unfortunately, I woke up before I could sew him back up, but I was happy that the surgery kind of went well overall.
Yeah.
So.
God, it's going to be really interesting for me to try and do this, because I'm such a squeamish person. I can't watch these. Well, I'm not really super squeamish, but when it comes to slicing people open, I just blah.
Well, maybe you could, I don't know, remove a really big splinter out of someone's foot or something.
I was thinking of just slicing somebody's arm off. I thought that might be easy.
Oh, wow. I think I would have to have the dream character fully unconscious before I could attempt that, because I was scared of them, being in pain. I don't want to see a character in pain and be my fault, but it was a step up in the right direction of getting over doing things like that, and keeps you from being held back from things like that in the future.
So you had your journal task, yeah.
Journal task was really interesting for several reasons. Again, my alarm had gone off, and I knew I had about 10 minutes before my boyfriend, basically, long story short, he's sort of my snooze alarm, before he'd wake me up 10 minutes later to get ready to go to work. So 10 minutes, right? And I started getting these wild vibration sensations, which is common if you're trying to wild, and I'm sure we included something like that in our lesson if you want for reference, but I started feeling these vibrations, and I slipped into a dream. I was unconscious for a few moments, because it wasn't a seamless transition, but I woke up, was in my backyard, and for a moment there, I was kind of looking at my plants and stuff, and they were kind of weird and weren't in the right place, and that's what triggered the lucidity. And I was like, well, this isn't right. And as soon as I was lucid, I thought for a moment, I was like, how did I get here? How did I become lucid from having been asleep? I know I fell asleep 2 seconds ago, because Danny's going to wake me up in about 8 minutes. and I couldn't remember the transition. It was just really important for me because I'm always trying to wild where you have a seamless transition, but no, I can't account for maybe a few seconds or a few minutes of time there. So I knew I had to work really quickly, and I managed to, you know, conjure a pen, conjure a piece of paper. I remembered that the night before I'd cooked chicken for dinner, a very specific recipe that I wanted to try, and I started trying to write it down on a piece of paper, and I got like the first two words out, and then I got distracted by something else on the paper. And then when I looked back at what I was writing, it was all gibberish, just garbled nonsense. So I scratched it out, and then beside it, I started to write it again. Same thing happened again. And finally, I said, okay, I'm going to write this sentence. Last night, I cooked chicken for dinner, and I'm not going to look away. And it felt like it took every single nerve cell in my brain just to get that simple little sentence out. It was really, really hard. But I finally got it out, and I understood the point of the task. I mean, you have to be able to recollect something from your waking life, and then which requires rational skills. And then writing it down also requires some, rational thinking as well, which, if any of you who've had lucid dreams and you've tried to read something or look at a clock, quite often it's all garbled, and I had to really concentrate and focus to keep that from happening, just so I could get from the beginning to the end of the sentence, which I did. And later on in the dream, actually, you appeared, and I wanted to show it to you. And when I showed it to you, what I'd written, it was all garbled again. It was like the sentence was there, but the vowels were missing, and some letters were backwards.
It's really interesting that you noticed that there's specific vowels missing and stuff though as well.
Yes. It was like, last night for dinner, I cooked chicken. It was really weird.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people will just see hieroglyphics. I think when I read stuff in dreams, well, sometimes I can read stuff in dreams perfectly, which is really odd. But I can never seem to really recall it much when I wake up, but I know that I did read it properly. But then other times when I read as well, it's just sort of these really weird sort of symbols that make no sense.
Yeah, very interesting how the brain interprets things like that when you're asleep.
So, anyway, moving on from the current task of the month, probably just go over these quickly now, so the episode's getting kind of long. We're up to about 25 minutes, nearly half an hour, I think.
Oh, yes, we are.
So, going over my tasks of the month, I did one. My first one was an advanced task of the month, actually, back in June, I think it was, where it was the train riding one. I think we mentioned it earlier as well, where you hop on the train and you have to ride it on top of the train while it's going at full speed.
Oh, you did that one. I didn't remember you did that one.
Yeah. It was a really interesting lucid dream as well, because I was trying to wild. This is when I was first starting to learn how to wild, and I was having all these crazy experiences where I was sort of becoming lucid inside of a dream after my failed wilds. So I was attempting the wild, and I went back into a previous dream scene that I had before, where I was in this sort of test lab, and I was with this other person. I tend to be with other people a lot in all of my dreams. So we break out of this test lab and we sort of run to the edge of the prison cell. We somehow break out, we avoid all of the guards. And outside there's just sort of this small patch of grass with like the wood sort of just cuts off and it goes down into this big void. So I jump right down the void. I'm really lucid at this point. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to fall down this void and I'm going to fall into a lucid dream. So I sort of go through a few conscious moments of blackness, and then I open my eyes and I'm in this room and lucid. There's like no ends to this room either. There's just it's two walls on either side and it seems to extend forever. And there's loads of kids' toys everywhere. And one of the toys I notice is a train. And this sort of sparks the memory for me to attempt the train lucid dream.
Oh, I remember this one now,
Yeah. So I'm focusing on this train and I'm sort of trying to build a dream scene around it. And as I'm focusing on it, the dream sort of changes. It's really weird, it was sort of sudden. I then find myself in this sort of train yard. It's all blocked off. There's walls everywhere, and there's just sky above, and there's a tunnel on either end. And as I'm standing there, a train just comes out of the tunnel, zooms by, and then goes in the other tunnel. So my subconscious sort of set up this really convenient dream for me to try and accomplish this task of the month, because every now and again a train would come through the tunnel and go into the other one. But then I'm sort of figuring out how I can get on top of this train, and for some reason I just don't think about flying at all. But I try morphing the walls out so I can climb up some steps, but that doesn't seem to work. Eventually I just sort of do this massive leap onto the train, and I managed to latch onto the train, and for some reason this one's a really, really small train, so I'm kind of like hugging the train on top of it, like with my arms around the train, and I'm zooming down, and we go into this other tunnel at the other end, and it just sort of fades into blackness, and the dream ends after that. So that was a really interesting task of the month where my subconscious just set up everything up perfectly.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. Coming up with the toy first, and yeah, very cool. I never got that task of the month, actually. I think it was too extreme sporty for me.
Yeah, I don't think I would get it either, because it's such a radical thing to do. It's not anything like I'd done in my lucid dreams previously.
No, that's good. That's good. Anything, yeah, that helps you break through a new boundary in a lucid dream. I like hearing about these kinds.
And
very cool.
My next one, I've only completed 2 tasks of the month so far. My next one was a basic task of the month from July last month, which I completed really early in the month. The 4th of July I completed it on. And this one I woke up inside of a dream, and I remembered that another person that had completed it before was in their bathroom, and they saw this bottle of Listerine on the side.
That was Burke.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I walked into my bathroom, and I ended up seeing this bottle of Listerine. And I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to have this dream where I'm going to drink a bottle of Listerine through my magical potion. So I turned around, and I'm kind of thinking, okay, this bottle of Listerine is going to turn into this glass jug or whatever with sort of green liquid in. And I turn back around, and it's sort of like what I was imagining, but it's sort of like a really small glass jug with a sort of pouring spout, and its handle is sort of like all intricately woven around the sides and everything. And inside there's this sort of bubbling green liquid. So I pick it up, I decide not to smell it in case it puts me off, and I take a sip, and it's just, I'm really shocked. It's sort of really strong, carbonated like a soda, but really powerful. So my tongue starts tingling and went numb, and then my ears ring, and I was like flinching in pain, and
Oh.
yeah, eventually that faded. But for some reason I'm a daredevil, and I decided to try it again. But this time I sort of seemed to enjoy the taste, like I got over the shock of it. And yeah, it was really interesting drinking in a dream, because I had trouble swallowing as well. I couldn't figure out how I could swallow in a dream. So my tongue sort of felt really fat, like it was swollen or something. But eventually I managed to swallow, and the taste of it I really seemed to start enjoying for some reason. I was lucid, but I was getting really overwhelmed by this taste, and I was sort of just like gulping it down, because it sort of tasted like lime flavoured water, but carbonated as well. It was really citrusy, and it's nothing like you would ever taste in real life, because it's really hard to explain. You get this sort of overwhelming sense that you really enjoy this thing that you're drinking. But because I enjoyed it so much, I drank half the potion by this time, and I was starting to worry about what would happen. And then I tried to walk away out of my bathroom, and I sort of stumble everywhere, and my vision's becoming blurred, and it's like the potion had made me drunk or something. And
yeah, it sounds like it was lime, and it was making you crazy. It sounds kind of like a margarita, or maybe a tequila slammer that you actually had.
yeah, and then my heart started beating really fast as well, and I fall over, and then I wake up.
Very interesting. Yeah, I remember reading a lot about the potions task, and every everybody had a completely different potion and a completely different reaction to it. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that Athena had a potion task, and she ended up being given 3 different potions by Severus Snape from Harry Potter.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, one made her go through muscle spasms, and the next one turned her into a winged horse, and the last one turned her into a puddle.
Yes. Yeah, that was a really, I liked the idea of that task because you had to be able to conjure up a potion, obviously, but it was basically like leaving it up to your subconscious to decide what the result was going to be. You had the idea was not to control the result. What would your subconscious do? What would it, do to you? And the simplest one was it caused someone to wake up, and so they decided it was called their potion was a wake up potion. Which that qualifies.
Yeah, we've had a lot of interesting tasks of the month. We've mentioned the walking through mirror one, and Paige Emps, who was previously one of our intro class apprentices, and she's now a dream guide. She went through, and everything was in reverse of the original dream scene. And everything she touched had this sort of gelatinous nature to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. I think a favourite one experience that I've read is Mzk's. Really interesting name to try and pronounce.
He has no vowels in his name, okay?
Yeah, his experience with tasting the rainbow, where he flew up to it and he's trying to pull this rainbow, and it's sort of like a fruit roll-up. And he tastes it, and it's got the texture of a fruit roll-up, but it tastes like stale popcorn.
So weird.
Yeah.
Very interesting. It's a very engaging task because anything that involves more than just sight and sound, something you can touch or taste or smell, those are all parts of a lucid dream that you can explore. It doesn't have to be limited to an activity or manipulating an object or whatever.
Yeah, so we're up to about 40 minutes now, so we should probably move things on to the task of the year.
Oh yes.
I mean, this year the theme is 1900s with 10 tasks total, each corresponding to a different decade, and you must complete all of the 10 tasks before 2013, and you can't do more than 1 task in a single dream.
Phew!
So we've got a couple of people who have completed this, but it's something that's really kind of hard to complete because obviously the rule is you can't complete more than 1 in a single dream, so you need to have at least 10 lucid dreams, and you need to do these things in each dream.
Yeah, the odds are really against the average lucid dreamer. They're very involved, but that's the point. Task of the year, it's very prestigious to accomplish this.
So the tasks we've got for this year are the Brownie camera, where the Brownie was the first camera that basically any person could own and use, and the task is to go back to the year 1900 and take a picture with this camera and describe what your picture looked like. Next one is the sinking of the RMS Titanic for 1912.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you've got to experience the sinking of this historic vessel and tell us what you saw. And then we've got the first television transmission from 1925, and you must go back and watch the first images and describe what you see. And the Hindenburg disaster from 1937 was a German Zeppelin that caught on fire in the late 30s, and you must become a passenger on the Hindenburg at the time of the fire and get out alive and then describe what happened.
Yikes.
Yeah, these are really crazy and really interesting as well. The Trinity test from 1945, which was the first nuclear device tested in New Mexico in the year 1945, and you go back and survive the explosion and describe the blast and how it felt.
I don't feel so morbid anymore.
Yeah. So, who came up with these anyway? Zebra?
Zebra, yeah. He was the last on-topic administrator before I got promoted. He had a lot of really great ideas for these kinds of things. I love it. Very inspirational man.
Yep, the Sputnik 1 is the next one from 1957. It's the first artificial satellite to be put in orbit around Earth, and you must go to the launch and tag along with Sputnik.
Oh wow, with or without an oxygen tank?
Who knows? And next is the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969, which was obviously the first spaceflight to the moon. And you need to beat Neil Armstrong to become the first human to stand on the moon. And I can imagine all sorts of ways you can go about doing this as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, push him down and back into the shuttle, and so you can get there first.
And next is the World Trade Center completion in 1973. And you need to visit the location and base jump off one of the Twin Towers, which would be interesting as well with the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, trying to experience the G-force and everything. Next is the eruption of Mount
St. Helens.
That's it. Located in Washington, and you must go to the year 1980 and experience the eruption of the volcano.
Oh boy.
And finally we've got the Hubble telescope launch in 1990, and it was discovered a few weeks later that there was a flawed mirror which caused pictures to be blurred, and the task here is to fly into space and fix the telescope.
My heavens.
So you have some very hard ones to try and complete, but you've got the entire year to do this.
Yeah.
And when you do complete it, you get a special name colour. I think that actually the only one who's done this is Hookif at the moment.
Oh, he completed all of them.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the other. I know Burke and Oreo Boy have completed, I guess, some of them, but you have to complete all of them before you get your name color. Is that it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot to do.
That is a lot to do.
Alright, so there's not much more to cover with the task of the year. I mean, we could go over experiences, but we don't want to make this episode too long. We're already at 40 minutes. So I think we'll skip back and go to ideas now that we have on how we could expand on this task system. I mean, these things aren't obviously determined to get implemented, but we thought it would be interesting to just talk back and forth with how we could expand things to make them more accessible to everybody and that sort of thing. I mean, I was talking to you yesterday about this.
Yes, having maybe a couple different levels or categories with the basic and advanced. Just like you said, kind of reach out to the member base a little bit more, because there are so many different levels of abilities, or people who are newer, who are just starting out, can get really intimidated by some of these tasks that are really quite advanced. Even the basic ones are kind of advanced. So it'd be nice to have something even more basic, maybe a basic, then an intermediate, and then something more advanced that you can choose from to get your wings.
Yeah, and we could sort of aim them, have sort of the basic ones that are specifically for members who have only been on the forum for maybe 1 or 2 months. And then the advanced ones for the members who've been here a long time and are really advanced at lucid dreaming.
Exactly.
And just different ways to get your wings. That would be really interesting. So generally, getting new members involved as well.
Absolutely. This is an idea. It's in the works. It's not set in stone or anything, just an idea. And it would be really great to get members, listeners, or whatever, to submit their ideas for this, because it's always nice to have a broad range of tasks to choose from for people to to attempt to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. If you have your ideas, just post in the thread with whatever, and we can maybe come back to this next week for maybe 5 minutes and go over your ideas if any get posted, which would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Alright, so to close this podcast off, this week we've been sorting out a subforum for the podcast on DreamViews itself, which, if I remember right, is under the general lucid dreaming discussion section even.
Yes.
And you can find it at dreamviews.com/F158. And in there we've got a podcast live stream times thread, so you can see when we're live streaming on Justin TV. So if you want, you can come and listen to the podcast live and maybe even talk to us while we're live streaming, which is something we'd like to incorporate. And we have another sticky for suggestions. We'd like to get your suggestions on topics and maybe even people who you would like to see come on the podcast as guests. We're going to maybe get someone on next week, hopefully, if we can sort things out early enough. And also, if you'd like to come on the podcast, you can post in there. Make sure you've got the equipment, a microphone, Skype, and time available. We usually record on Friday at about 7 PM CST, Of course, we can be flexible if you can't make it at that time. So yeah, make sure you go check out that forum, dreamviews.com/F158.
Absolutely. Yeah, and any ideas you have for the show or anything that you want to do to make it better, we'll consider. Yeah.
Yep. So
I got nothing else.
so I think that's it for this week. Sorry it's kind of long again. I'm not sure whether people prefer these long ones or whether they'd like to see shorter ones. So yeah, definitely let us know which format you prefer. So that's it for this week. Do you want to say bye-bye?
Bye-bye. Sweet lucid dreams, y'all.
See you next week.